I really believe, and my guides have told me this since I was really young, that health and healing starts with knowing yourself and connection to intuition, which is part of trusting yourself. If you are blocked off from yourself because of stress or trauma or any of the other millions of things that can happen to us, then you can't be in your body. And your body holds such great wisdom in terms of giving us signals and messages that we need to pay attention to, that we can use those signals and that information in conjunction with the appropriate healing professionals, or sometimes just on our own, to help now and in the future and prevent problems and things like that. So I feel like the missing piece is that trust in ourselves and the connection to intuition and our bodies.
Great title for a podcast, Blessings.
Thank you. Yes, I love it.
What a great meditation.
We are here to learn in the spirit of life.
I'm all about believe. You're about spreading blessings. It's great.
What about your blessings? What's the biggest blessing of life?
What a great question.
Because it's the Blessings podcast, I have to ask you, what is your biggest lesson in life?
My biggest lesson in life.
A whole lot of conversations with people about life and how those things manifest as blessings and lessons, and sometimes both.
It's my connection.
You're going to get schooled.
The journey is the journey.
What you and me are searching for are the blessings in this life.
Remember the reality of how sweet people are.
Spread blessings around the world.
You are the most remarkable energy. You make me pause, make me excited, make me think, and make me spontaneously come up with an answer. This is another one of those great moments in time in my life. Thank you for reaching out to ask if I would do the show.
Welcome back to the Blessings podcast, my friends. When I began to experience health issues, which I detailed in my 100th episode, one of the first things I did was consult a famous medical intuitive. And I read his books and followed his protocols for what I thought was, quote, wrong. And it helped very much, but it didn't take care of everything. And I think that's because I wasn't looking for the right medical intuitive. And so when you are unwell, it's a comprehensive systemic problem. Healing goes much deeper than just taking a pill or cutting out gluten and dairy. It is complex, and intuition is something we all possess that can be applied to our healing. My guest today takes medical intuitive work to the next level. And I read her book, Heal from Within, a guidebook to intuitive wellness. And I went through her process in 48 hours, by the way. I read the book and went through the whole process because I was so intrigued. And I found out things about myself that I never realized before. And I've been working on this for years. It's interesting to note that when you look at things through a fresh lens with the right person, you're going to uncover things you didn't see. So although I knew that my illness was related to things buried very deep within my whole self, even generational wounds were involved. I knew that, but I hadn't really examined it. Now, today, we're going to talk with Katie Beecher, a medical and emotional intuitive and licensed professional counselor, featured in very prominent media outlets like Poosh, Miranda Kerr's, Cora Organics, and Goop, one of my faves. She reads people and provides a full report on their medical issues. And the only thing she needs to do this is their name and their age. This is amazing. She finds out things about their lives, their conditions with incredible accuracy. And her personal story takes her from her roots in a dysfunctional family through an eating disorder and a just-in-time pivot guided by a divine hand to developing her gifts over the course of her lifetime. Her calling has been to write books and contribute to the healing of thousands of people across the world. With her proprietary techniques and combining Jungian psychology, which I love, Carl Jung, and deep dives into the body's energy centers. She shows people how to discover their strengths and pinpoint their physical and emotional and spiritual root causes for their issues while creating a lifelong step-by-step plan to address these challenges. So welcome. That was long, but I had to say all that. Welcome, Katie Beecher, to the show.
Thank you. And I love that. Thank you so much. I'm honored that you would say all that nice stuff.
I really went into it because this is my jam. And also because it relates to me personally. So I feel like there's some divine intervention in our coming together there. Just, what I'm learning so far, which I just think is amazing.
Thank you.
So I have a lot of questions for you.
Great.
Something I've been curious about. So many people I know, and I don't know if it's my age or stage of life or whatever, but a lot of people that I know are having issues and they end up going to this doctor and this doctor. And it's a piecemeal approach. They're not getting any answers. There's no consistency. They can't get to the root cause and they're still not feeling well. They get a prescription here, a suggestion here. They don't advocate for themselves and they just are stuck in the spinning wheel of the medical system. So what should we be doing as a frontline approach to our health and to healing rather than what we've been conditioned to do?
Yeah, all good points. I really believe, and my guides have told me this since I was really young, that health and healing starts with knowing yourself and connection to intuition, which is part of trusting yourself. If you are blocked off from yourself because of stress or trauma or any of the other millions of things that can happen to us, then you can't be in your body. And your body holds such great wisdom in terms of giving us signals and messages that we need to pay attention to, that we can use those signals and that information in conjunction with the appropriate healing professionals, or sometimes just on our own, to help now and in the future and prevent problems and things like that. So I feel like the missing piece is that trust in ourselves and the connection to intuition and our bodies. Because without that, like you said, you go to all these different people and you make them the authorities over your body. And you substitute your own judgment for theirs. And it doesn't work. There's some great practitioners, but unfortunately, because of our medical system, insurance only lets doctors attend to one symptom at a time or something. Like, it's so dysfunctional. And so they don't look at the whole person. And specialists, while they can be useful, they exacerbate the problem because then they're just intensely going into just one area and not looking at anything else.
Yeah, it is so problematic. And it's very interesting because we can wake up with one symptom here and there. And you think these are isolated things. Like, I can go back and think about how, oh, I had a frozen shoulder once. And when I'm reading your book and I'm like, wow, I did have that. I did have that. I did have that. And then after a certain amount of time, what happens with people is they end up with what they say or is labeled a chronic condition.
Yep.
Because now it's all of these things together that have added up to something and now they're debilitated. But you really bring up a good point. Why is it that we don't trust ourselves and we put this trust over our bodies into these other, and yes, I think doctors are authorities on things, some things, but they're not gods. They don't know everything.
Right,
and
right.
It's very interesting. So when you are looking at a person, do you find resistance in this, or people come to you, they're pretty much they're open and ready?
I would say there's more fear than resistance. And I think there's certainly doubt, because people often come to me when they've exhausted so many other possibilities and they've spent so much money and it hasn't worked. They've heard good things about me and everything else, but they're also a little afraid to get their hopes up, because what if I'm another person that doesn't help or doesn't listen? And then there's a lot of fear about what's the process going to be like? What am I going to say? And number one, I cannot legally or ethically diagnose. I can point out symptoms and I can send you in directions and do all that other stuff, but I am not going to tell you have cancer. Dear God, that's not what I do. But I am honest, but I'm really compassionate. And I teach people during every session how to connect with their intuition and their bodies. And it's a back and forth thing when we meet. But it's fear of knowing that they need to change things that are really scary, and not having confidence in themselves, not knowing how, not knowing. So just one example, people come to me with something, my guides will pick up their relationship isn't working, or they're being mistreated, or they're not setting boundaries, or whatever it is. And so we talk about that, this stuff has to be taken care of while you're healing. You can't heal in an unhealthy environment. You can't let yourself be mistreated or abused and expect to be healthy. So And change is hard. It is, and it can be really overwhelming. So that's more of what I pick up, I think, than resisting what I have to say.
Okay, it's so interesting. I think people experience fear because these things become a part of our identity. And to change them means that we are, in essence, changing our identities. And it is very deep, which we'll get into. But I want to just get really basic and explain for people, what is a medical intuitive?
Yes. Okay. So
what's going on?
I work differently than all the other ones I know in that I create a 4-page report and an intuitive soul painting. Most people I know don't do that before work. They ask for information, they whatever. Okay. So I work differently, but essentially I'm able to tune in to people's bodies and their energy and their life. So time isn't really a thing. I see somebody's whole lifetime, and anything that may be impacting them positively or negatively, right? Because everything that has happened to us has an effect. And I'm able to tune in and pick up symptoms. Like I said, I can see inside the body. I can also bring messages from loved ones who have passed, because I'm a medium too. Pretty neat. Talk to their pets, come in a lot, right? So it's basically that tuning into someone's life and energy and body and detecting what's going on, positively and negatively. And then it's really important for me when I work with people to leave them with starting points and a game plan for things that they can actually do to start getting better. So it's more than just concepts and things like that.
I find this really fascinating. Do you find that this is something that causes you difficulty in that when you meet people, are you bombarded by information from your guides? How do you function in the world?
That's a really good question. Okay. Growing up in a dysfunctional home was training for that. And with dysfunctional extended family members. So I had to learn at a really early age, and this was part of my recovery from the eating disorder, that I could not take on other people's stuff. I couldn't absorb their stuff. Their life is separate from mine. Learned really early on that pain can be a really great teacher. So other people's pain might be enormously transformative, important experience. And it's not my job to go in and fix it or save it. So that's one thing. But I've learned that I can turn it on and off, my intuitive abilities on and off, to the extent that, and I think that's why I do a lot of the work beforehand, just myself. During the meeting, I get tons more information from my guides too. But it's just kind of me and my guides in a quiet space, and I can open up, turn everything on. And then when I'm done, I can turn off that connection with that other person. And I now just let in what I need to. So if there's warnings, if there's good feelings, like when I meet somebody, how do I feel about them? More than I feel like it's invasive to pick up stuff, although it does happen sometimes. And sometimes I'm like, hey, do you have any symptoms? Because I'm picking this up. It's only somebody that like, I know I would do it to a stranger. But yeah, it's a lot of training. And I think 35 years as a therapist in conjunction with being a medical intuitive has also helped that a lot.
The interesting thing is that you discovered this ability along the way. You didn't choose it. It chose you. Can you talk a little bit about how you realized that this was happening for you?
I, even from a really young age, just remember hearing this voice that wasn't mine, having this presence around, being able to tune into people's feelings and their energy. Like I could always pick up evil. I could always pick up love. And I remember being 3, this is my oldest memory, I think, being 3, and my parents were fighting about some stupid scrambled eggs or something. And I heard this voice say, and it stopped me cold. It said, these people are not equipped to raise you. You are on your own, and we're here for you. And it was like, not that I didn't already know, but to hear it like that was like, okay. I think it was a combination of knowing people's energy was there, picking up that evil, picking up spirits or whatever. And at first I didn't know what to do with it at all. Thankfully, because I had a Jungian therapist, they're very open to that, and they encouraged it and helped me, including protecting myself from negativity and evil, which is a big thing. Because when you are a light worker or do any kind of loving work, evil does try to come in and scare you. mess with your life and stuff. And that happened in my own family too. So yeah, it was a combination of allowing what was happening, accepting it, realizing that this was a part of me and I could try to shut it down, which didn't work, or I could learn more about it and expand my gift.
Wow. So why do you think I believe we choose our parents, and I'm sure you probably agree with me, knowing what I know. Why do you think you chose that situation to come into? What were you meant to learn?
I believe that there are people who come into the world, and I feel like it's even more now, who are there to break the cycle of pain and dysfunction and evil. Yeah. And there's no way, that the title of your podcast, I really feel like all the things that have happened to me have been a blessing. And the eating disorder was a culmination of a lot of that stuff. If I didn't have to go through that pain, I would not have learned to love myself and accept myself and connect to spirit and do all the things I learned. I really feel like it was to break that cycle of dysfunction as much as I could only do it in my own family, and then to pass everything I've learned on to other people and show them that you can live differently. And so, yeah, it's funny because every time I find out that I have something like I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a hypermobility disorder, and my daughter has it too. And it's so funny because as soon as I got formally diagnosed, I started to pick it up in so many clients. I'm like, okay, fine. You can use me as a guinea pig as long as I can function.
Yeah, that's funny. I do have that, but mildly. So
I know.
Yeah. That's so funny. That's crazy. So I just want to clarify for the folks at home, when you say guides,
Okay.
are these like entities? Are they people? Or do you have names for them? What are they? Is it voices? Is it something that actually you hear the tone of their voice? Just because I think when people are tapping in, like I believe I have guides, but I don't hear them as individual people or individual entities. So maybe it's different for everyone. I don't know. Can you explain what that feels like for you?
Yeah, I agree. I think it is a little bit different for everyone. I don't know the names of my spiritual guides. Having said that, my grandparents are part of my guide thing. Yep. And when I, in my mind's eye, try to picture my guides, I see me sitting at a half circle table, and in the first row are my main people. I know something about them. Like I know one of them is an older man who is very involved. He was like a spiritual Native American chief, something like that. I don't know what he looks like or whatever. And then I have some women who were involved in like the Incas and stuff like that from that area and part of the world. But I basically see them. They don't have faces. And then there are rows and rows of other people who are looking over us and our guides. That's what I see. It's a combination of hearing a voice in my head, and it feels like it's from more than one person, just like you, right? It's not just one singular voice. They show me scenes in my head, so I can see the inside of somebody's body. I can see if I'm talking to somebody in spirit. I usually see them as an old black and white photograph, which is neat. And sometimes I feel things in my body. So symptoms, I do see words in my head too. Like I'm really lucky I've just cultivated all these different ways. And even through my paintings, they give me the messages through the colors and the symbols and things like that too.
Fascinating. It's funny you said the Native American, because I think one of my guides is a Native American spirit. It was actually my daughter, when she was very small, had an imaginary friend. And this is a strange name. The name was Karimos. And it's like not a word that a child would make up. She never would have heard that name. And she totally made this up. We thought she made it up at the time. But later on, I really felt like this was a presence in our family, like a protective presence in our family. And I thought about it. Even my mom used to talk about a Native American spirit, and she never named it. But I feel like it's one of my guides. There are no coincidences. And as we're talking, I've gotten a few little goosebumps. And I think it's really cool, the idea that you can be the family liberator. Now, I believe I am that for my family. And since I went through your exercises, I believe it even more strongly. Because what I found out in going, and I really encourage people to buy this book, especially if you're healing from something, it would be great if you could work with Katie personally too, but at least get started in this process. Because when you go through the energy centers in the body, you can feel, this is what happened to me. I felt, for example, the root chakra, the energy center. I felt like my root is great. I had an amazing family. I thought my parents were fantastic. They did a wonderful job. But my mom had a lot of trauma that I didn't know about as I was growing up. And she tried to hide it from us, thinking she was protecting us. But honestly, what actually she did was she didn't resolve it and it was passed on. And so I now know about it, know basically what it was. And so as I was looking at the root chakra, I wasn't doing it for myself. I was thinking about it in terms of my mom and what I still have to heal for her ancestrally. How does that work, in your estimation? That I also have another spiritual kind of guru friend who talks about how you can, when you heal yourself, you're actually healing, he says, 7 generations before and 7 generations ahead. So how do you think this works? And can it be that a person who is diagnosed with or self-diagnosed with something, quote, chronic, could this be so chronic because it's accumulated across generations? That's a lot.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I absolutely believe that we do generationally heal others as well as ourselves. And it makes sense that it goes in the past, right? And especially that it goes into the future, because, for instance, my husband and I decided to raise our girls the opposite of how we were raised. So now they are very compassionate, caring people who stand up for themselves, who aren't going to take any crap, who, and they'll keep passing that on to whoever they meet. So it's more than just even families. It's also how we treat the world around us. Is love, energy gets multiplied, whether it's good or bad. I always go back to a lot of Jungian principles with this and the concept of the collective unconscious, which has been actually proven by quantum physics. Cool stuff, right?
Yes, so cool.
We are all connected. That time really is more of a concept than an absolute. That our genes are connected. We're connected by mythology and similar experiences, and that it bypasses language. And that's where a lot of the symbolism and things like that come in. So it doesn't matter what language we speak, because we can still communicate, we can still feel, we can still do all of that. But I absolutely believe that we are a force for change, and we choose whether it's a positive one or a negative one.
I totally agree. And sometimes I wonder if there isn't something going on collectively with a overfilled bucket for the collective of negativity and trauma. If you just look at it from a practical standpoint, you can go to, quote, the doctor if you're not feeling well, and the doctors are completely overwhelmed. The system is completely overwhelmed. There are so many people who are ill, so many, it's insane. I had to wait a year to get an appointment with a specific kind of doctor for my condition. And it didn't end up helping me anyway. But the point that if you are seeking that medical assistance, the system is breaking down because it is completely oversaturated. Do you feel like there is some sort of a collective, quote, illness or a collective healing that needs to take place?
I really do. I feel like a lot of negative things, fear, prejudices, anger, victimization, all the things that have always been a part of our culture, right? I feel like for a long time, it was pushed down and not talked about. And in some ways, that's good, because you don't really want to expose your racism or your homophobia. That's not really nice to do to other people, right? So yes, you should be contained. And it seems like now just everyone's stuff is out there. Whatever it is, it's out there. And it goes back to the shadow concept of, if things are in the dark, no one knows that they're there, and no one knows that there are. But if you bring them into the light, that's the only way that they can be healed and confronted and changed. So it's looking back over everybody's history. There's been periods of upheaval and good and bad stuff and everything. But yeah, I think people often ask about my recovery from eating disorder. And I needed a spiritual component. That seems to be what's really missing, is the spiritual component, the connection to others, the connection to intuition. And that being cut off makes it really hard to be happy or healthy. So what fascinates me when I work with people, especially chronically ill people, is the changes that happen because of that illness. So one example is you take somebody who can't set boundaries, who can't stand up for themselves, who puts others before themselves, not enough self-care. Then they get sick. And sometimes they have to get really sick to get this message because the little stuff doesn't do it. But let's say you're sick enough that you're bedridden, or you get some disease that people are really worried about you, right? Number one, you have an excuse to say no to something. If you don't want to go somewhere, if you don't want to do a favor for somebody, whatever, a legitimate excuse is, I don't feel well. I'm sick, right? You have to take care of yourself when you're sick. So that gives you permission for more self-care. You don't have time, if you're going to the doctors and doing all the stuff, to take care of everybody else. So it's a way of giving yourself permission to be healthier and happier and more authentic that you don't think you deserve if you're healthy. And that's so sad.
Yes.
It's so sad, but that's where some of these changes come from. And I try to talk to people about, you don't need to be sick to say no to your voice, and then your body won't have to take over with negative symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah. How would you like to get the best text of your life? This is your sign that it's time to add something powerful to your morning routine that sets you up for success and reminds you that you are worthy and makes you unstoppable. It's a motivational text message from me, a real human. I am Mitzi Campbell, a mindset specialist, and I know that it is possible for you to live the life of your dreams. My morning motivational text messages help you up-level your mindset, your happiness, and your success. Sign up for a 2-week free trial at yourpositivemoment.com and change your life today. Join the movement so we can all thrive together. yourpositivemoment.com. And I believe that symptoms are always signals about something that you need to change in your life. It's really interesting when you think about it that way. I just want to go back to a little bit about your eating disorder. What spiritually is the meaning of an eating disorder?
So for me, there were two things that I believe were most of the contributors for it. One was when I was 10, I got my period. That's really early. I developed earlier than most people. And a group of girls, because girls are lovely, decided to literally torment me for half of the school year. And it was a really small school. We were in the same classes every day. I couldn't escape. I couldn't go to another place, another school, whatever. I was trapped. And I didn't tell anyone because I was ashamed. So no one knew what was going on. The teachers knew it was happening right in front of them, and they did nothing, right? So I didn't have any protection. But I ended up hating my female body, hating my body in general, hating me, blah, blah, blah. And then take my family situation where there was control and narcissism. And the day that I started any weight loss at all, like I gained 20 pounds, a few a day was fine, whatever, I didn't really care, was the day my father said, you shouldn't be getting the ice cream out of the freezer, that ice cream out of the freezer, because you've gained weight and you don't need it. And I was like, now this is a man sitting there with a big belly.
Yeah.
Okay. With no self-control
Not calling the
whatsoever.
kettle black.
Oh God. So addicted to food and everything. So I was like, screw you, I'm having it anyway. But that very next day is when I started my first diet. And it was extreme. It was 1,000 calories a day. And then I got attention for getting that. Thinking about eating disorders like other addictions is really useful. It's a way to push feelings down. It's a way to dissociate. It's a way to, for me, with the bulimia, with throwing up, it was a way to take a whole mess of stuff in and then get rid of it. The body dysmorphia and stuff that goes along with it. So it's lack of love for yourself, lack of knowledge of yourself, being a perfectionist, having to have everything perfect. So therefore, you need to control everything, and God and whatever, there's no place for you if you're always having to control everything. You don't trust anything. You haven't been able to trust anyone. So there's so many different, and even like the throat, like not being able to express your feelings, and the throat's involved, and it's really fascinating. But yeah, and then tie in eating disorders to EDS. A lot of EDS people have eating disorders. And then there's the neurodivergence piece that's all connected too. So thinking differently, being different, it just wasn't, I just was never, except when I was around my grandparents, I never felt good about who I was.
Wow. You mentioned just in passing earlier that your job is not to fix everything for people. And I think this is a really important thing for especially those of us who are healers and helpers and givers, and because people come here with their specific life lessons to learn. And I think these quote diseases and conditions are a part of our journey. They're inevitable. They're things that we chose and signed up for to learn specific things. And going through the healing process is part of that. And it doesn't have to even be a condition or disease. It could just be an experience that you have to go through that's difficult. And so it's important to let people go through those things. But how can we support people without going overboard and trying to fix it for them? Because if we fix it for them, they're going to have to go through it again. We're actually prolonging it for them.
Exactly. I really like to remind people, like I said, that other people's pain might be their best experience and their best gift. And so it's not your job to remove that. And it's okay. Like pain, looking at pain in a different way, not that it's, you have empathy and you have sympathy for people. You don't wish them that, but looking at pain more objectively and as a tool for change. Because when I was going through all my stuff, I didn't tell anyone that I had an eating disorder or anything until that day that I called our family doctor. And if I was not ready to change, it wasn't going to happen. Somebody putting me in treatment, somebody talking to me, shaming me, whatever, it wouldn't have mattered. It just wouldn't have happened because I wasn't ready. You can let people know that you're there, that you love them, that you care about them, that you're there to listen, you love them unconditionally, and that you're there if they want to reach out for help from you. And I think also like being honest with people about if someone is going off about how nothing's their fault and everything's whatever the thing is.
It's all the outside. Right? It's all something else, something out there.
Exactly. To that honesty with love, like we do as helpers, is really important, because if you don't challenge people, if I don't get challenged, my husband doesn't parrot back everything I say to him as truth. He's honest with me in a loving way. That's good. You need that, because we distort things and we have our own biases and stuff. And often we're not accurate.
Because we're also driven by the ego, not just the intuition.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now when you had your eating disorder, I know that it got to a point where things were very dire and you were contemplating the idea whether you wanted to actually continue to be in this world. And you had a divine intervention. Can you just explain what happened and what it did for you what kind of a shift that was for you in your life?
Yeah, no, I actually had a suicide plan. I was just like, I can't live this way anymore. And it's too much, it's too hard, it's too much pressure, it's interfering with my life. I can't go on that way. And I often look back on the moment that I took the step to reach out for help and try to figure out why. And one of the things I can connect is that I found out that I got into a school that was 6 hours away and I got a scholarship. So I think, and all the other schools I had applied to were in the same state. So I think that may have been a moment of, ooh, I can have some freedom from this. But all I can say is I came home from school one day and just felt very strongly that it was time to change. And I didn't know how. I didn't tell my parents because they wouldn't have been any help at all. And so I called our pediatrician. I don't even know why, right? Told them what I was doing. It was the early 80s. So people didn't talk about eating disorders. And he basically was like, I'm sure you'll be okay. You'll grow out of it or whatever. And I was like, no, I'm not okay. This is not getting better. And so he gave me the name of the Jungian therapist. It took me 3 months to call her because I was scared, and that's okay. 2 or 3 months, I don't remember. But when I did, it was like, that was the perfect person for me to work with. I honestly believe that there's greater forces out there working for us. And even the whole time during my recovery, I'm like, you need to write a book. You need to keep these things in mind. You need to teach people that you don't have to be devastated every day and destroy yourself and hurt yourself. Like, there's another way to live.
Yeah. Yeah. There is another way. It just requires the hardest thing that you'll ever do in your life, which is change who you are.
I'll even go one further. The hardest thing about recovery was learning to love and accept myself.
Yeah.
And that's so sad.
Did you know that you didn't love yourself?
I think that on some level I did. I was dissociated a lot, which is part of being an empath and intuitive and having an eating disorder. So I was out there a lot. I had no idea how little love I had, how little confidence I had. I knew I was always like really shy and stuff like that. But I think I didn't really deal with it very well, because that, again, would have meant admitting how much pain I was in.
Yeah.
And the eating disorder is masking the pain.
Now, I know that in Jungian psychology, the shadow work is a huge piece, and also working with dreams is huge. I want to talk a little bit about dreams. What's your feeling about the dreams that we have? How do they connect? What do they mean? Just a basic overview of how we can tap into our dreams.
Yeah, I would love to. In my book, I teach people how to interpret their dreams through Jungian psychology. And I just think any kind of symbolism is so fascinating. And that's why I do my paintings too, because images, symbolism, all that is a universal language, right? So I'll just tell people a little bit about that. When you have a dream, try to write it down as soon as you can in as much detail as you can, and you'll get more information. And then literally, it takes a while, and it can take somebody working with you to interpret even one dream sometimes. But literally start at the beginning and just be like, okay, what is happening in the first thing I remember? What is that scene? Does it look like anywhere that I know? Does it feel like somewhere I know? Do I know where it is? What are colors? Who's there? Often when we dream about other people, it's not necessarily them, it's parts of ourselves that are like that person, right? So you really dissect every little bit, even if there's a number or there's a color, or now we have the internet, but I have some really amazing, super thick books on symbolism and just looking at what an elephant means in art or in religion or in some culture or in whatever. And then you look those things up and see what resonates with you. Your dreams are your personal messengers. So it's really important that you figure out what resonates for you and what it means for you. Somebody else having that same dream could be totally opposite meanings.
Yeah, I've started keeping dream journals over the past maybe 4 or 5 years, and I actually put them in red notebooks because of Carl Jung. Yes, the red books. I put all my dreams in these red notebooks.
Love it.
I know, isn't that funny? And when I first started writing them down, which is pretty recently, I started with the dreams that I have that are recurring dreams. What are recurring dreams?
Those are the most important ones. Those are the themes, the feelings, the images that I find that they're underlying everything else. And they may often represent fears that we're not aware of, or things that we're too afraid to deal with, or like they're running, but you can't get away from the person or whatever you're running from, like that helplessness, or the going to take a test and not having a pen, or general thing. But yes, you are going to screw this up. And
yes.
It could be a fear of not trusting or lack of confidence or perfectionism or whatever. But I think it's that underlying shadow stuff. And those are the most important, but also the scary dreams are the most important.
Wow.
Because it's like a little bit of illness and a severe illness. If you have a nightmare, you're much more likely to remember it, to be woken up by it. So you remember it more. It's like in your face and it's unpleasant. Those are the ones that are trying to get your attention the most.
Yeah. Okay. That is so interesting. So I'm going to tell you something that happened after I read your book. I went through it, and I'll show, I have, we're not going to go through all these, but I brought all my notes. I have all these notes. So there's different steps to Katie's process. She has all these questions you answer first, and you write through like almost like journal kind of type of thing. And then you have a chart. I just made my own. You go through physical and emotional parts of each energy center. I was interested after reading this in opening up my pineal gland. And I put that out there that I wanted to work on that first. And before I went to sleep, I had an intention of working on that. And I remembered that in my family, we always used to look for pine cones, and my grandmother used to make things out of pine cones. And there were a lot of pine cones. And that I had this children's story that I actually just wrote that I'm hoping to get published. And it's about an adventure in a pine forest. And I didn't even put any of this together. And I never even thought pine cone pineal gland ever before I read your book and went through this. So I went to sleep that night when I put this intention out, and I had a horrible dream. And you just said, what you just said is the conclusion I came to. It had to be a scary dream because I had to pay attention to it. So what happened in the dream was I was in the bank, and I was just about to leave the bank, and someone came in to rob the bank. And there was like a turnstile you had to walk through to get in and out of the bank. And I was about to go through it. He came barreling in and pushed me out of the way, and I fell to the floor. And he said something like, hands up, or something like this. And I'm on the floor pretending to be dead. Or passed out, so he wouldn't hurt me. And then he ends up, this is terrible, I'm just trigger warning for people. He ends up using his weapon to fire off shots, and one of them hits me in the head. And there is a shot that hits me in the head, and I'm not gone. I'm not leaving or dying. I'll say it. I don't want to mess up the algorithm from publishing that, but I could feel this sensation in my head of this like oozing sensation. And it was like my head and my brain was like opening up, like it was expanding and oozing. I felt that sensation in my dream. I feel things in my dreams. I hear things, I smell things.
Me too. Yeah, I could lucid dream too. Yep.
But then, so I woke up and I was like, whoa, like it was shocking, terrifying that I had been shot in my dream in the head. I was like, wow, but I didn't die. And then when I woke up, I looked it up, and I found information that opening the pineal gland feels like oozing, like it's oozing in the head. I was like, holy moly. Like I couldn't believe that happened. It was crazy. Just for people to understand how powerful these things really are when you're working with these energy centers and how it can help you. And a lot of my personal health issues have been neurological. So that idea of opening things up and getting things flowing in that area of my body was important to me as well. But so interesting, right? Anything come up for you when I tell that story?
Yeah. One thing is, so banks are about transactions and like work and career and things like that, plenty, abundance, all those things. That could be some of the symbolism. It could also be banks are not trusted, and so they're corrupt institutions and no regulation. So there's a lot of just stuff around a bank, right? But you can go there and put your money somewhere it's trusted. It's not going to get stolen theoretically. So then you're in a safe place. You're in this turnstile, which is very restrictive.
Yeah, it was like a little narrow chute you had to go through and to get in and out of the bank.
So you didn't have the freedom. You were trapped, right? And then a man, masculine energy, comes along and shoots you in the head, which
shoves me to the ground first.
Okay, shoves you to the ground, right? Okay, yeah, you're not even here, and then we're going to do this, which should be certain death. That's one of the things.
Yes.
But that male energy, as aggressive as it was, as potentially deadly as it was, didn't kill you. It actually ended up expanding your feminine energy.
Yes.
Have you felt like masculine energy or certain males or whatever have been oppressive? As a woman, it's hard not to feel that way sometimes. So think about your perception of men and masculinity, toxic masculinity, maybe all that stuff, and how that has impacted your freeing and expression of female power and energy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never would have thought about the bank part of it. I was so focused on the getting shot in the head part of it.
Mhm,
I never
mhm.
even thought about the bank part of it. But now that you bring it up, I think it's interesting because now that you're saying this, what I think, and I'll explore this further, but what I think is that right now in my life and my career and stuff, I am in the process of, for the very first time in my life, really taking control of my own power and finances and everything for the first time in my whole life. And I'm 58 years old. And that is definitely something that has been difficult for me because I struggle with what I had, like how I started on my adult journey was in a very kind of secondary position. Like I wanted to be a teacher and I love being a teacher and I was a teacher for a long time, but I never would have been able to support myself or my lifestyle as a teacher if I didn't have a husband. I was married and I'm now divorced from that man, but during that time of my life, he was the primary breadwinner. He did everything. He earned all the money and I never, and so it's a long story, but throughout my entire life, I've always relied on a male figure for that support and always wanted to do it on my own and wondered like, why haven't I? And now I am in the stage of my life where I am now doing that. So it is really interesting that you bring that up. Very interesting. Okay. Wow. I love it.
Nothing is an accident. Nothing is a coincidence in a dream. It's all symbolic.
That is so cool. I think people should be calling you now and knocking down your door. One of the things that you do, which is really unique, is the soul painting. Yours are beautiful with the watercolors. Now, when I went through this exercise, I do sometimes paint, but I'm not like my painting. I wasn't confident in my painting ability. So I thought I'm just going to draw something and let it flow and see what comes out. Okay. So this is what I got. This is terrible, but okay.
Stop criticizing yourself.
I know, stop. So it's me. You can't, I have this background on here, but it's me.
Okay.
And what I ended up doing was I made the body like this triangle. And I ended up making myself like my chest is so huge, my shoulders and my chest area is so huge. And then the rest of me is like smaller. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting how that came out. It makes me look like I'm like a superhero kind of thing.
That's what I saw first, this big like chest. And I have this image of people
chest. My heart, maybe, because I have a big heart. I don't know.
That too. But I had this image of people chest butting. People like football players or whatever, they do that chest bump thing.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of romancy thing, but it can also be like a power thing. Yeah. And your chest looked very masculine.
Yeah, it did. I know. I'm very masculine in this picture.
Right.
Very masculine.
We could spend forever, and the colors do add to it.
I should go back. I know you recommend that, doing intuitive, like just being intuitive with the colors. And if I would go back and redo this as a painting. Like I definitely would pull out a watercolor or something, or just and try it. And because I wouldn't be, but I just was going through that part of it. It was interesting because that was the part of it I was resistant to. I loved the rest of the process. Yeah. But doing the drawing and the painting was part that I was like, oh, okay, that one's not my favorite part of it. But why? Interesting, right?
Because you started out introducing this piece as this is horrible.
Yeah, awful. That's true. I criticized. I did. I was all very I did.
Paintings, and people can see examples of them in my book. They look like a 5-year-old did them.
Okay.
That's what they're supposed to look like. I'm a fine artist. I can do the other stuff all day long. But when I started to do these, I'm like, oh my God, what are people going to think? These are like silly. And they're such an amazing source of information. And people love them. They like print them out and frame them. It's so fun. But it's because we're so hard on ourselves, especially with things like art. And you think about the end product and what it's going to look like, not the process.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm very creative. I do a lot of other creative things, but drawing, painting, I'm just not as confident there. So interesting.
It's a symbolic exercise.
Yeah. Yeah. And I loved it. I love it. Like, I'm definitely going to go back and work more on that. But now, if we went a little over, is that okay for you?
Yes.
Okay. Because I would really love to ask you if you would just give us a little bit of a demo with me, if that's okay for you. Okay. And you can say anything. I'm totally open to whatever comes up for you.
Can I cheat with what I emailed you?
What?
Can I cheat? with what I emailed you?
Oh yeah, of course. Yes, definitely. And if anything else comes up, but yeah, because before this is really, I'll just preface it. So before we ever spoke, and I didn't know Katie at all, she didn't know anything about me. And she, in the email, asked me, is it okay if I tell you some things that I'm picking up about you? And I was like, sure, that would be amazing. And you're not the first person. It's interesting because I've had other people in my life who have said to me, I'm getting a message for you. Is it okay if I share it with you? And the first couple times it freaked me out, but now I love it. So it's yes. So I will, and Katie only needs your name and your age, but now she's got my face and everything and my voice. So we'll see what she comes up with. But my audience knows what I've been going through. So it's fine. And I'm feeling like amazing now.
Yeah. So even when we've started our conversation here, my guides were like, she has connective tissue issues. She has some EDS tendencies. There's some hypermobility there and some inflammation and things like that. And that's also what I wrote. I looked it up. Connective tissue symptoms. And also neurodivergence in a lovely way. But
I'm definitely a unique thinker.
Right? Love that. Some short attention span stuff, which is great and also annoying, but it's good. Rapid thinker, a lot of overthinking, but a lot of thoughts coming in all the time. And it can be hard to sort them out. And you definitely need time to be present so that things don't get overwhelming, because you can go to past and future real easily. But just like time to be with water and with yourself and doing the art and the creativity and all that kind of stuff. And some gut stuff, reproductive area issues. But I felt like there was a little bit of lingering stuff, but overall it was a lot better because you had done the work on it. And you're interesting. Okay. So when I look in your reproductive area now in that second chakra, I'm seeing red, and they're saying it's not because the physical issues are still there, because I feel like you've gotten those surgery resolved, whatever the stuff is, but it's red in an electric way of you tapping into that area and building your female energy and power.
Ooh, okay.
So it's in a very positive sort of way. Not that things are negative and positive, but it's like this ignited, woohoo, I got all this stuff cleared out. And now I can focus on the real important stuff, which is the energetic work.
Yes.
I love that. And yeah, just like I said, part of your body being stiff and part of it being more flexible. What else? Oh gosh. Okay. I wrote a lot of stuff the first time, like bladder things, interstitial cystitis type symptoms, neurodivergence. I said that. Need for control. And you usually take care of things on your own. Some body dysmorphia, right? Empathic and sensitive, have been working on boundaries and self-care and giving too much to others. And your divorce was a piece of that as well. And I'm trying to think if there's anything. So when I look into your brain, I'm seeing almost like little lightning bolts going through horizontally. And they're saying part of that is that all of your thinking centers and creative centers are open right now because we're doing this. But it's also the pineal gland opening. And it's just like lots of thoughts and feelings and ideas that are coming through that can be overwhelming sometimes. And I wouldn't be surprised, I think, if you got little energy zaps sometimes.
I do.
Okay, so that's what they're telling you.
Yes, brain zaps. I do
Brain
get
zaps,
brain zaps. Yes, I do.
Yep. That's exactly what they were saying. Yeah, so that electricity was also some of that.
Yep.
And what is going on with your lower extremities? Like, I don't know if it's like they're showing me like calf, ankle, foot thing. Anything going on down there?
Calf, ankle, foot. I don't think so.
Yeah, maybe it's a warning.
Okay.
I don't know. Nothing bad, but it's nothing, it didn't feel extreme. It was more like just tension, or like how your foot sometimes gets stretched out underneath, like your arches.
Okay.
Something like that.
The only thing I have on my feet is I get chilblains.
Oh.
If you know what those are, it's just, they're like blisters you get when your feet are really cold. My feet are very cold. I'm always cold. My feet are always cold.
Okay. Yeah, it was something, it felt, I don't know if it was like tight calf muscles. I don't know what the muscle is called there, but just like some tightness, some uncomfortableness, something. So,
Okay.
whatever that's worth.
I'll be on the lookout.
Yeah,
I did break my
yeah.
toe not long ago.
Oh, maybe it stemmed from that.
Yeah.
It feels like a halting, like it was hard to move forward with ease.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, it wasn't severe. It's not like it's going to stop you from anything, but it was just an uncomfortableness. And they said it was, and you breaking your toe too, was a way of slowing you down.
Not surprised. I know.
Yes. You have to slow down. You have to not be as active, and brings you into your body. And feet are about moving forward. They're about stability. They're about grounding. So it forced you to focus on the area where you need grounding.
Yeah, that's true. Very true. Yeah. It's just really fascinating. I love it. Thank you so much for going through that. I encourage everyone to get the book, get in touch with Katie, and it really is worthwhile to go into this type of work for yourself, especially if you are at your kind of wit's end and you've tried everything and you're not getting the answers you want. You got to at some point realize it's more than just your symptoms. It's not only about this quote medical like diagnosis. In fact, it's funny, when I was like in the throes of my problems, one of the things that they wanted to label me with multiple sclerosis. And I was like, no, that just does not feel like I'm like, am I in denial, or is it really doesn't feel like that's it? And I'm like, no, it does not feel like that is what is wrong with me. And I spoke to one of the world's most prominent multiple sclerosis doctors on the show, Dr. Terry Walls. And we talked twice. And Dr. Walls told me that I didn't even need a diagnosis because it doesn't matter, because you're going to take care of it. And she was very much a proponent of the kind of things that you do, but more in a medical sense. But she goes beyond, and she works with a lot of food and lifestyle and supplements.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And then and I know she doesn't say this per se, because she's got to be quote careful, but she definitely talked about ancestral trauma and all of that stuff that is trapped in the energy centers of the body. And so that kind of opened my eyes to like having the world's most prominent authority on multiple sclerosis tell me that I don't need to be diagnosed with multiple sclerosis to cure the symptoms. And she was totally right.
So true.
Yeah.
And diagnoses have their place, but I think they're limiting and they're scary and don't always serve, because like when I had Lyme disease, I purposely made an effort to never use the word Lyme. I stopped saying my in front of my symptoms. I talked to it. I figured out why it was there, what it wanted me to do. The message was, hey, it's time for you to finally write your book. So get to work on the proposal, wench. Because I was in my mid 40s and been told when I was 16 to write the book. So if you want to get better, you need to do this. I'm like, oh my God. Okay, fine. For me, that was my message, because I had it since I was a kid. Why get diagnosed in your 40s? Yeah. To see illness and symptoms in a non-scary way, make them your friends. I talk about how to do that in my book, but make them their friends, listen to them instead of making them be like something wrong with you or something broken or evil or all the negative stuff, because then it just becomes overwhelming and you feel like you don't have any power, and you do.
Just trust yourself, and don't give in to the fear of, a lot of times we get, especially if it's a really concerning diagnosis like a cancer or something, people get so scared that they think they don't have time to go in and really do this work. But I think you do. Yeah, I think you do. And I think we're like self-healing machines. We really are set up to heal ourselves with the right information, and the information comes from within.
It does. And even like cancer makes me nuts, because the traditional medical system is you're going to get it back. Okay. And that's how they tell you to approach it. So your anxiety level is crazy. What if they were to say, you know what? We don't see it anymore. It's gone. And you are healed. And it's a great idea to come back to check it out, because it's happened. Maybe your lifestyle, your stress, whatever makes you more susceptible to it. But right now you're healed. Come back. We'll keep checking. But it's almost like it makes it, that anxiety and that self-fulfilling prophecy makes it come back.
Yeah, no, I think so. And the way I look at it is, I don't think it's ever gone with the medical approach. I don't think the medical approach eradicates it.
Correct.
And it may, I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so I don't want to go too far, but like my feeling, if it were me, is I would go through this approach that you take and just continue working on the self and doing the inner work. And even like Louise Hay, who is a pioneer of this kind of work, but you take her kind of the ideas of the different parts of the body and stuff and the information you get from your guides and take it like so much further. And it really, it is not a quick fix. That's the one thing people should know. It's not a quick fix. It's something you have to have patience and trust. But as you begin to work with it, you'll see the changes taking place. And then you can begin to have faith and certainty. And that's part of it, is just like believing in that. And like you alluded to at the beginning, all the quantum work, we do have scientific proof now that you can change your DNA.
Yeah. And that we're all connected energetically, and time is not absolute and all those cool things. And I also want people to remember, if you have healed from something, right, and don't address your spiritual and emotional stuff and dysfunction in your life, that might be gone, but you're going to get something else. So,
yeah, very good point. I think that's a great thing for people to hold on to, that maybe will help them to take that first step to actually dig into this. And so I just want to ask you, my two last questions are, what are your biggest lesson and blessing from your life?
oh, I guess they go together. It's that there's no such thing as perfection, and that being yourself is a wonderful thing. There's improvements that can be made. There's things that you already do really well, but to try and look at yourself objectively with unconditional love, doing that will help you then be able to look at all of your stuff and address it in a way that isn't scary, and to be able to be honest. And just, I would compare myself to others all the time and think there was something wrong with me and other people were better. Blah. And I know that everybody has their stuff. So to learning to stand up for myself, get myself out of negative influences and stuff, and just be authentic. That's really why we're here.
Yes. Yes. To learn how to be our true selves.
Yep.
And live in that truth. I love it. Thank you, Katie. This has been an amazing conversation. I love talking to you and I love all this stuff. And what is the name of your website and where can people find you?
It's katiebeecher.com. So Becher. That's the easiest way. I'm on Instagram, Katie Beecher Medical Intuitive, and Facebook and all the places. And then my book is available wherever books are sold. There's a link on my website too. I think it's Amazon or Barnes & Noble or something. But yeah, my website's probably the most central location.
Okay, great. And I'll have all the information on all of this in the show notes, so people can just go down there and click the link if they want to buy the book, or just go onto your website or book an appointment or whatever they want to do. So thanks again. It was so great. And I hope you have an amazing day.
Thank you so much. I really loved being here.
Hey, everybody still listening, will you go give a 5-star review to this podcast? Mitzi puts in so much effort and so much love into this. She's brilliant. She deserves it. So I am going to go right now. By the way, by the time you hear this and you go give your 5-star review, you should be able to go find my 5-star review of this podcast. But I just want to thank you for what you're doing.